Hello, my friends, and welcome to Tales from South Florida, the podcast where we remember the people, places, and stories that help make South Florida what it is today, hot and humid. Well, no, it's more than that. Oh, by the way, I'm your host, Bill Monty. And as always, I invite you to take a talk down memory lane with me.
These are the tales from South Florida for you. With your host, Bill Monty.
Now, before we get started, I'd like to remind you to please subscribe so you'll know when new episodes are released. It's free. You don't have to pay anything for it. So just hit that subscribe or follow button. Be sure to comment and share the podcast because that truly helps put the show in front of more eyes and more ears. And finally, please don't forget to visit Talesfromsouthflorida.com. That's where you'll find all of our audio episodes, links to our YouTube channel for the video episodes, our Spotify playlist, and even more ways to support the show through the Buy Me a Coffee link. Oh, by the way, thank you to Dave C. and David B. You've bought me a couple of cups of coffee. You gave me some caffeine to help keep the show going. I do appreciate it. So come on, be like David's. Buy me a coffee. For the first part of our journey today, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Those of you who grew up in Broward County, I don't know, maybe even Dade County, I don't know if your school kids did these trips too, but raise your hand if you remember the school field trips to the McArthur Dairy farms. It was located on 441. I think it was in Sunrise, maybe it was Plantation. But on the school field trip, you'd go and tour where they made the milk, then you'd get some milk and cookies at the end of it all. Or you may have attended McArthur High School in Hollywood. Listen, today we're talking about a man whose name many South Floridians know even if they don't realize it. His name was James Neville McArthur. But I hear he likes being referred to, though, as Neville McArthur. And look, he's much more than a name on a high school. But you knew that already, didn't you? No? Well, then sit back. Come on, grab a cold glass of milk, maybe a cookie. Let's go meet Mr. McArthur. McArthur's story is tied directly to the growth of modern South Florida. Listen, this is a story of farming, business, philanthropy, education, and a time when Florida still had open land, not much of that around anymore, dairy farms, and those school field trips that smelled like fresh milk and machinery. That's quite a combo. James Neville McArthur was born October 13, 1892, in Preston, Mississippi. He was the son of John Wesley and Hattie McArthur. He did eventually make his way to Florida during that time when the state was rapidly transforming. Like many early Floridians looking for opportunity, he literally saw a land of milk and money. Rhymes with honey. You see, South Florida in the early 20th century was exploding with growth. Railroads, they were extending farther south. Developers were promoting Florida as paradise. Families were moving in. The hotels were rising. The cities were forming. And with all that growth came some demand. You see, the people moving here, well, they needed homes, and they needed roads, and they needed schools, and perhaps most importantly, they needed food. Back in the early 1900s, fresh milk in South Florida, as you might imagine, was not easy to come by. Transportation was difficult. The roads weren't much better. Refrigeration technology was still developing. Milk spoiled quickly in Florida's heat. That's hard to imagine. Getting safe dairy products to consumers, that was a real challenge. And Mr. McArthur, he loved a good challenge. He established what would become McArthur Dairy in the late 1920s. The dairy operation grew rapidly. It became one of the most recognized names in South Florida households for decades. For many listeners, hearing the words McArthur Dairy, it might bring back a lot of memories for you. You remember the glass bottles, the milk trucks, the milkman? Who remembers the milkman? My God, that's days gone by, huh? The logo on cartons in school cafeterias, the dairy products stacked inside neighborhood grocery stores. Yeah, for generations of South Floridians, McArthur Dairy was simply a part of our life. The operation became known not only for milk production, but for modernization, for innovation. He understood that quality and cleanliness mattered tremendously in the dairy business. And at a time when consumers were increasingly concerned about food safety, he made sure that his company was going to have a reputation for dependable products and modern processing methods. The dairy itself became something of a South Florida landmark. Many longtime residents, like yours truly, remember those school tours that I mentioned before. For children growing up in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, those trips were unforgettable. I mean, imagine being a kid walking through a giant dairy processing plant. I remember the huge stainless steel tanks, the conveyor belts carrying bottles and cartons, the workers all in the white uniforms, and machines that were filling containers at what was to me an incredible speed. Yeah, for a lot of us kids, it was our first look inside a real industrial operation. And at the end of the tour, chocolate milk or ice cream, sometimes both. That alone made it legendary. In many ways, those tours represented something larger about Old South Florida. You see, that was a time, and you hear about it today, I know, with things that are going on, but really back then it seems to me that businesses were more connected to the community. Companies often welcomed the local schools. Children learned where products came from. It was just a lot of pride in what was going on in South Florida back then. James Neville McArthur's success in business eventually allowed him to become one of South Florida's most important philanthropists. And nowhere was that more visible than at the University of Miami. McArthur, he became one of the university's major benefactors. His financial support helped the institution expand during some really important years. Over time, the McArthur name became permanently associated with the university through buildings, programs, scholarships, and contributions that supported education and research. The relationship between successful Florida entrepreneurs and growing institutions like the University of Miami, that was crucial during the mid-20th century because South Florida was still defining itself. Wealthy business leaders often helped shape the cultural and educational future of this region. James McArthur clearly believed that success carried responsibility. So his philanthropy, it went beyond just writing checks. He became known as someone interested in improving Florida communities and supporting long-term educational opportunities. In fact, even though we've been talking a lot about the dairy part of his legacy, one of the most enduring aspects of it may not be dairy at all. It may be education. And that brings us to one of the most recognizable places, at least in Broward County, that carries his name, McArthur High School, located in Hollywood. Now, for generations of Broward County students, McArthur High became more than just a school. It became part of the neighborhood identity. And if you grew up down here, you probably knew someone who attended McArthur High. Maybe you went there yourself. Maybe you're listening to someone right now who went to McArthur High. And when I did go there, I have to tell you, I didn't know who the school was named after. It's not something they ever talked about. You know, I guess looking back, I probably thought it was Douglas MacArthur, you know, the general from World War II, if I'd thought about it at all. I mean, not likely, but it could have been James MacArthur, but not the dairy guy. This was the guy that was an actor on Hawaii Five-0. One of the Jack Lord's character would turn to her and say, "Book 'em, Dano." But that didn't play either. But really, didn't think about it very much. Now I know. The school opened up in 1957 during a time when Broward County was rapidly expanding. Look, families were pouring into Broward County around that time. New schools were needed constantly. MacArthur donated 40 acres of land to build the school. So naming the school after him, besides being obvious, reflected how important he had become to the development and reputation of South Florida. And let's talk about one other MacArthur name here, the MacArthur Causeway. It's not named after James MacArthur. Technically, the causeway honors General Douglas MacArthur, who I thought the high school was named after. But interestingly, a lot of people down here do incorrectly assume that it was connected to Neville McArthur because of the familiar name. By the way, they were not related. But that confusion, that itself says something about how prominent the MacArthur name became throughout South Florida life. And while the causeway does not directly honor James Neville McArthur, his influence across the region was certainly substantial enough that many people kind of make that connection. MacArthur represented a generation of Florida builders who arrived before South Florida became the massive urban region we know today. These were people who helped create the infrastructure of modern life here by building businesses, creating the jobs that were so needed, investing in the communities, and supporting the schools and universities. It's difficult for newer residents to fully appreciate how agricultural South Florida once was. Long before the endless condo towers and the crowded expressways, there were huge parts of Dade and Broward County that were filled with farmland and dairies and nurseries and open spaces. You could drive through areas that today are completely urbanized, and you would still see cattle and fields and farming operations. And McArthur Dairy, it was part of that agricultural backbone. The company grew into one of the most significant dairy operations in the state of Florida. And if you grew up here, you still remember seeing a McArthur product in your refrigerator. Eventually, he was recognized not only as a businessman, but a respected civic figure. His contributions left a lasting imprint on Florida. Did I mention he started with just 20 cows? And it grew into one of the largest privately owned and operated dairies in the world. He pioneered modern dairy practices like milking machines and advanced herd management. He helped Florida become the largest milk-producing state in the Southeast. As a matter of fact, he was later honored through the Florida Agricultural Hall of Fame, who recognized his impact on the state's development and educational support. He served on numerous civic boards, including the Dade County United Fund, and he chaired the National Committee to Employ Physically Handicapped Persons. He was active in health campaigns such as those battling tuberculosis and heart disease. As a principal at Miami's Dade County Agricultural High School, he taught students himself the practical skills in dairy production and marketing. He represented Florida in trade delegations to Latin America. He chaired the World's Fair in the Dominican Republic in 1956. McArthur's combination of agricultural innovation, civic engagement, and international goodwill made him a respected figure in South Florida whose legacy is still remembered in the region's dairy heritage and community history. And maybe that's one of the greatest measures of influence, when a person's work becomes so woven so deeply into everyday life that even future generations recognize the name, even if they no longer know the full story. Now, we do know the story, and that's why these tales matter. South Florida changes incredibly fast, but history survives when we talk about it. I'll be right back with a few more words.
Does the news cycle make you feel like you're on a tilt-a-whirl of outrage? Feeling like your brain is a political piñata getting whacked 24/7? There's an antidote. Outrage Overload is the podcast where we hit the pause button on the outrage train. We dissect the headlines, peel back the layers of negativity, and explore the science behind why you keep wanting to throw your phone at the wall. Before you lose another brain cell to outrage fatigue, check out the Outrage Overload podcast at outrageoverload.net or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, James Neville McArthur represents a version of Florida that many people still remember fondly. I know I do. It was a South Florida where agriculture mattered, where local businesses dominated the landscape, and where community connections, well, they felt more personal. And for longtime residents, hearing the name McArthur probably still triggers a memory somewhere. Because that's the magic of local history. Hey, before we wrap up, a reminder, please remember to subscribe or follow, again, so you'll be notified when new episodes become available. And visit Talesfromsouthflorida.com. Just go there and have some fun. It's a great place to visit. I do appreciate it. Listen, my friends, until next time, this is Bill Monty reminding you to please be safe and be kind.
Let's take a talk down memory lane, 'cause the stories around here are just insane. Pirates World, the Sporto and Wolfie's too. Palm Beach to Key West, that's where we grew. These are the tales from South Florida for you. With your host, Bill Monty.
Hello, friends. Bill Monty here, and I'm inviting you to join me on the podcast, Bill Monty's Guide for Getting Older. Now, this is not a podcast about being old. No, it's about understanding the world we're growing older in, how we care for each other, how we protect what we've built, and how we make sense of the systems that are supposed to look out for us, especially when we need them the most. Bill Monty's Guide for Getting Older. It is available wherever fine podcasts can be found, and I look forward to talking with you soon.